What a great way to finish the week.
It's been an absolutely amazing week. In fact, if we have a look at the S&P ASX 200, this index started in 1992. And since 1992, we've now seen 3 weeks where we have seen performance over 7%. This week was the second best performance ever. It's the best performance that we've seen since the 28th of November 2008, where we did see the market gaining 9.5%. So it has been an absolute incredible week, dominated by the central bank coordinated action. In terms of today's action, it's been quite an impressive one as well. As you can see from the intraday graph behind me, it's really the last hour of trade where things started to speed up and we saw a fantastic gain for the Australian market. One of the themes on the market today was the Standard & Poor's rebalancing that we saw out. We're going to see a number of companies added to the benchmark ASX 200 index as of the close of the 16th of December, and it looks like some managers trying to get in ahead of that rebalance. So the stocks that will be added to the benchmark index include Integra, Impress, Ramelius Resources and Silver Lake Resources. That's 4 stocks. 3 out of those 4 stocks are gold companies this quarter. And if we have a look at share price performances of these companies, all doing quite well today. We saw Impress up by a massive 4.4%, Ramelius up by 7.6%, Silver Lake up by 2.8%. On the flip side, some of the stocks coming out of the benchmark index not having a good session at all. Chorus will be coming out. Its stock saw a decline of 3.7%. Guns will also be coming out. That saw a decline of 3%. And OMH will be coming out as well. That saw a decline of 5.1%. In fact, Murchison Metals, the only one coming out of the index which managed to see a positive performance, that was up by 1.3% today. But otherwise, a fantastic day for the Australian market. A bit of a strange one, though, with the defensive areas outperforming. Staples and healthcare, the big winners on our market today.
Yeah, I want to get to that in just a sec, as we move forward, particularly into next week. I suppose we've had 5 on the trot of gains. Do you think it can continue?
A lot of investors will be hoping for a Santa rally. We're in the last month of the year now, and if we have a look at what really sped up the gains this week, it was that central bank coordination. Next week will all be about central banks as well. We see a number of interest rate meetings coming through from the Reserve Bank, Bank of Canada, the Bank of England and the ECB. So that's going to be watched very closely. We've already seen China cutting its reserve requirement ratio by 50 basis points this week, and we've seen Brazil also cutting rates as well. So if we do start to see rates coming down, that should be a positive for markets as long as we get no more bad news out of Europe. There was a sense this week, although the central bank coordination was seen as a positive, the other big question was, well, what was it that scared the central bank so much into coordinated action this early on in the game? So I guess on one side we have the central banks moving, we'll have the interest rate meetings. If we see cuts, that will be a positive as long as nothing negative comes out of Europe. If we have a look at this week, an extremely positive one, up by 7.6%. I mean, it's the best performance since November 2008 when we did see that 9.5% performance. I guess the bad news there was that was followed up with a decline in the markets the following week, a decline of 7%. But if we look back to the 2007 performance of the market back on the 28th of August, where the market saw an increase of 7.4%, the good news is that we followed it up with a 2.6% gain. So I think if we do start to see interest rate cuts next week, that will be a positive for markets. But of course, the market's still focused in on Europe, and that could change the game very quickly.
One of the big ones coming overnight, the S&P downgrading of the big 4 Australian banks, as well as obviously Macquarie got caught up in it as well. It got down by 2 notches. Macquarie shares really seem to take the news badly. The big 4 banks, not so much.
The big 4 banks having an absolutely unbelievable week. In fact, financials were the star performers this week. We saw banks like ANZ up by a massive 11%, Commonwealth Bank up by 9% in 1 week. And then if we go out and have a look at NAB, that was up by 13% in the last 5 trading sessions, with Westpac gaining 11%. So the S&P downgrade, the Standard & Poor's downgrade, really expected, and from a change of method rather than anything else. So the big 4 banks still looking quite strong in comparison to other global banks. And in terms of funding, Commonwealth Bank's already come out to say that it shouldn't have a material impact in terms of funding. In fact, the European debt situation is probably the bigger impact. And the banks all having a positive session today. Macquarie was under pressure earlier on in the session and did underperform the market. It was cut down by 2 notches. But altogether, in terms of the banking space and the big 4 banks, absolutely having a stellar week.
Now, there was a few